Yeah, okay, it's recording. Yeah, it doesn't sound like and the strange thing is people over the years have called this a program, and in a sense, because it has so much structure to it, you could say it's a program, but at the same time, it's criminal harassment. Like, we say we're being gang stalked, and technically we are being gang stalked because it's a group of people doing it, and any time, and a group of people is a gang. So it's a group of people stalking us, and they put out community alerts and have private investigators contact people, and the Freemasons are involved in a lot of this, and they tell people specifically, what to do, what not to do, and there's a lot of structure to it, but at the same time, you know, nobody tells us anything. We don't get a letter, we don't get a phone call. No one comes to us and tells us what's going on. We just wake up one day and all we know is something very strange is happening that we really can't accurately decipher. We can't, really put into context what's happening. We just know our neighbors are acting strange, and when we go places, it appears that we're being watched and followed. And I mean, I guess you can say that's a program, but you know, like you're saying, if it is a program, I'd like to know exactly what it's all leading to. What's the goal of the program?
Yeah, exactly. Like the goal can't be anything good because there's no way they're gonna put this much time and effort to mess with every little small facet of your life for like a good, goal. People don't respond well to negativity. If you really want someone to change for the better, make positive, you help them out in a positive manner. You don't bully, harass, torture, and literally follow them around all day, make fun of them, and scrutinize every small mistake they do again and again and again, and like work off of their insecurities to make fun of them off of it.
Right, right. It's all based on negative reinforcement.
Yeah, literally.
Right, and there's very few people that I've seen able to get a prosecution in any of this. There's some woman, I forget what state she was in, but one of her coworkers had it set up to where she was sending out sex offender alerts for the woman and different sorts of alerts, and she was spreading a lot of disinformation about the woman through emails and stuff, and she ruined the woman's reputation. And what I don't get is how can a regular person on the streets who's supposed to be your coworker have the ability to send out sex offender alerts for you? And the woman wasn't a sex offender. But I've been saying for a while, even if she was a sex offender, still how would somebody on the streets have the capacity to send out alerts to politicians and coworkers and all sorts of other people? Like, why would that be her job to do something like that? And it was all for harassment. And then there's the Paulina Cooper case where she was a journalist who exposed Scientology, and then she got stalked and harassed for a long time. And the FBI ended up raiding one of the offices of the Church of Scientology and found a file about how they had co-conspired against her. And so, like, 8 people were arrested and went to federal prison. And then in the case of the other woman I was talking about, she hired a private investigator, and the private investigator found out what was going on and passed that information along to like the prosecutor or the police, and they did something about it. But those are the only 2 cases I've ever seen of anybody being apprehended for what we're describing as gang stalking.
And then after that, did the gang stalking like fully stop, or did it like continue, or?
Well, in Paulita Cooper's case, it seemed it stopped. She never had any problems again. But in the case of the other woman, she moved away. I don't know if she left the state. I think she left the state. But she moved away, and I don't know if it continued for her or not. But, you know.
Yeah. That's smart. That's what I should have done the first time that it stopped for me. I should have just moved away for Alfred and started to be life.
Well, see, I went to Arizona for a couple weeks, and it followed me all the way there. The gang stalking continued across state lines all the way to Phoenix, Arizona, and then it happened while I was in Arizona, and then it followed me all the way back.
Man.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a true hell to go through that. And you know, all my neighbors where I was living at, they were all involved. Where I was living at in Michigan, they were all involved in it. You know, I don't know if they were using My Neighbor apps on their phone or this was just through word of mouth. People in the neighborhood were just telling each other what to do. I don't know how it was explained to them, but I was being gang stalked by the whole neighborhood. And then when I went to my trial, the woman across the street from me, Robin Pastuca, she said at my trial, they asked her at my trial, did she ever follow me or anything? And she said no, but that was a lie. Because she had followed me numerous times over before my trial and after my trial.
Jeez, yeah, I remember you told me.
Yeah. So then there was like three other people living in Muskegon. Two of them emailed me like in 2018, and then one of them I met in jail when I was framed, and they all told me that this stuff was happening to them, but I don't think it was happening to them near at the level it was happening to me, and they all seemed afraid to talk about it. One of the guys really didn't know what it was. He explained what was happening to him. He said he found he said he had found a neighborhood watch group type flyer in his mailbox, and then he sort of made a joke out of it and put it on his Facebook and said, "We don't have any problems here. We don't need a neighborhood watch group." And he made a joke about it. He said the next day, all his neighbors were following him around in and out of the neighborhood and stuff. And then he was being followed around by cars with their brights on. And I told him it was gang stalking, and he said he had never heard of it. And then he acted like he kind of didn't believe me. And I said, "Well, man, if you don't believe me, then what's happening to you? How do I know what's happening to you if I didn't understand what was happening to you? How would I be able to explain it?" And he was kind of stupid. But then there was these two other guys that lived in downtown Muskegon area. One of them lived in the Nelson neighborhood, and another one lived in another part of Muskegon. I forget what part of Muskegon it was, but they had both been being gang stalked, and they were kind of scared to go online and talk about it. Like, I don't know why they were scared, but you know, they were intimidated to talk about it. And you know, earlier today, man, there was this girl. She was from Canada, and she had a few videos up, a few videos of footage, then a lot of other videos of her just talking. And then she was talking about how, you know, she took her footage videos down, and then she was talking about how it's all about God, and she doesn't want to talk about this stuff. And I thought to myself how stupid that sounds, because, like, you know, you can imagine in Nazi Germany, people probably said, "Don't talk about it." And in Soviet Russia, people probably said, don't talk about it, leave it up to God. And, during the civil rights movement, what would have happened if Martin Luther King would have told everybody, don't talk about it, leave it up to God? Nothing ever would have got done.
Yeah, facts.
And and then you got to look at Jesus, man. Jesus exposed the government, and he exposed corrupt religious leaders, and he did a lot of exposure. And so, people talk about leave it up to Jesus, leave it up to God. Well, look what Jesus did. Jesus exposed all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? What makes them better than Jesus that they can't do what Jesus did? And so, he was murdered in a brutal way. And I guess that's why they're scared. They claim to believe in Jesus, but they really don't believe in Jesus if they're afraid to get up there and do what Jesus would do.
Exactly, bro. That's exactly what I'm saying. I don't feel like these people they're not Christians. They say it just to look good. They're not really Christians.
Right, yeah. Because it looks good, because it looks good. You know what I'm saying? That's the whole thing. Like, there's all kinds of churches around the country, and people claim to believe in God and all that just because it looks good, but very few of them are actually going to go up there and do something like Jesus would do, or speak out. Like, you never see preachers. You've seen preachers in protest being arrested, and there's been priests in protest that were in protest that got arrested, but you've never really seen like a preacher or a reverend get on national television and say end the wars and stuff like that. You just don't see that. But at the same time, they're supposed to be doing what Jesus does, and they're not doing it. If Jesus was on TV, he'd be telling everything.
Yeah. I hear the government controls the preachers, though, the churches. They tell them what to say and what not to say.
Yeah, they do. They do. There's supposed to be a separation of church and state, but the government is, especially in today's world, man. Maybe 100 years ago, not as much, but in today's world, the government has extremely close relationship with mainstream churches, and all of these churches are in like federal contracts with the government.
Jeez. I know most of the pastors be evil, like the rich ones. They just be taking money from the poor and their churchgoers.
Yeah, they do. They, in these churches, what I never got about these churches is like where I live at in Norton Shores, a lot of these churches that are primarily Caucasian people, they'll spend all this money going to Africa or South America or Asia and spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to help people in these poverty-stricken communities find Christ and do right. Why aren't they doing that here? You know what I'm saying? They're like 10 minutes away from where they're at Norton Shores. There's poverty-stricken communities and stuff, and they could go there and do the same thing, but for some reason they're not. They'd rather go to a third world country, which leads me to believe that these churches are involved in it's sort of more like a cult. You know what I'm saying? Like they want to just spread their religion, and somehow their religion is going to solve the answers to the world's problems. Well, if their religion was going to solve the answers to the world's problems, we wouldn't be having all these problems in America right now.
Literally. You can't just preach God, you got to take action with it too.
Right. And, like Martin Luther King, you know what I'm saying? Martin Luther King, he was one of the few people that I've ever seen truly living out the Christian gospel like Jesus was in modern times. And he was like in jail every week, and he was almost stabbed to death. They tried to put him in prison for 10 years. He got out of that, and then they murdered him. And then Martin Luther King's own son's talking about how the guy who was in prison for murdering Martin Luther King didn't even really do it. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah, I believe that.
yeah, yeah. And then his brother, A.D. King, was murdered a year later, found dead in a swimming pool. And then his mother was murdered in the 70s by this guy who appeared to be under some sort of government mind control.
Jesus, the world is just such a messed up place.
Right, right. Well, it shows, man. It really shows that, you know, if people really want to get out there and be in the truth and be in the light and be like Jesus, and they're gonna pay the kind of price Jesus had to pay. You know, I think I was talking to you about this, man. Like, if Jesus was really alive right now in America, talking about the same kind of stuff he was talking about back then, like, sadly but true, he probably wouldn't be around for more than a couple months.
Yeah, and nobody will believe him. The media will twist and lie and say he's mentally deranged and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Even if he was doing miracles and stuff, they would twist it around and say that the people who believe he's doing miracles are mentally deranged and he's mentally deranged. And, you know, they'd probably send him away to some hospital somewhere and kill him. And, you know, there was a lot of people in America, like, you know, 50, 60 something years ago that were really trying to do stuff like that. And they were a lot of them were murdered.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Right. Yeah. I don't like that, these police in America, man, like, you know, they just keep shooting people and killing people and nothing happens. Like, there was a cop in Detroit. He went into this woman's house and murdered her granddaughter. Her granddaughter was like 7 or 8 years old and she was sleeping on a couch. And the cop went in there and just shot her and killed her. And the family got like a few $1,000,000. I think they got like $6 million or something, which, you know, is a lot better than nothing. But still, though, man, like, the cop never got arrested. He never even got, like, and I don't even think he got put under criminal investigation or anything. You know, he might even still be working for the Detroit police. I don't know. But, you know, it seems like the government wants this stuff going on. Like, they want to see what the public's gonna do. Like, they want these shootings and all this stuff to happen to see how far they can go.
Yeah, it's just a giant psyop.
Right. And, you know, this, like, with the gang stalking, you know, I never even knew gang stalking existed. Like, I was a conspiracy researcher for like 10 years before it started happening to me. But between 2011 and 2012, I came across a blog online, and it was the blog What You Need to Know. I think that was the name of it. And it talked about gang stalking. There was like a few paragraphs on the page that talked about gang stalking, and it just said it's greatly increased since the 1990s. And I remember when I read it, I thought that would never happen to me. I imagined it's probably happening to some people, but I was like, you know, it'll probably never happen to me. And then when it happened to me, I remembered reading that. But I wish I had learned more about it. I wish I had watched YouTube videos on it and stuff and learned more about what kind of stuff they do. Like, I had to find all that stuff out for myself. And it's like, you know, there's thousands of people around the country it's happening to, and it's more like a silent Holocaust because very few people, regular people, have ever heard of anything like that. Some people have heard of COINTELPRO, but they've never heard of gang stalking.
Yeah, it's like most people don't know what it is, or they're in on it themselves. Like, it's either one or the other.
Right. Like, what I don't get about what happened to me is I was on YouTube for 4 years, man. No, I was on YouTube from 2016 to 2019 in that neighborhood, telling everybody. Before that, I just did conspiracy research on YouTube, but after the gang stalking started, I waited a couple months. Then I started doing videos on gang stalking. So it was like from 2016 to 2019. But what I don't get is how all these people in this neighborhood were involved in it. And then outside the neighborhood, there was a lot of people that I don't know that were involved in it. And everybody sat there and watched me make YouTube videos about saying gang stalking. And it's pretty obvious that there was something seriously wrong, that whatever they were doing was really hurting me and affecting my life in a very negative way. But they just kept going on and on and on with it. It's like, whatever they were being told somehow overrided the fact that this stuff was destroying my life. And nobody did anything to try and help me. I was stalked and harassed for 4 years. And 4.5 years, actually. And no one did anything to try and help me. And it was all over YouTube. Like thousands, like people all over the world know I'm being gang stalked. But in the little community that I live in, everybody pretends like it's not real. But at the same time, they keep doing whatever they're doing.
Yeah, the bullshit thing about it too is just that if you messed up in life, like you made a mistake, like most mistakes are forgivable. But it's like if someone does something bad that makes them a bad person, gang stalking them doesn't make you a better person. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't fight evil all the time.
Right. Well, I don't think gang stalking was created to punish people for crimes they've committed or for immoral wrongs. It appears that gang stalking was created to punish like activists and conspiracy researchers and protesters, and then at the same time do experiments on a lot of people. Like a lot of people that this happens to were never conspiracy researchers or activists or protesters or anything. They're just people who wake up one day and they're being gang stalked, and they've really never thought about anything having to do with the government in general anyway. Like a lot of the people that I've interviewed and I've talked to, they didn't know anything about government cover-ups and stuff like that, And then with me, I was researching this stuff for government cover-ups and conspiracies for like 10 years. And, a lot of people hear conspiracies and stuff, and they think that's just somebody just connecting pieces and coming up with their own theories. All you have to do is read government documents. The government has thousands and thousands of documents that show that there's a lot of deception and flat out lies the media and the government at one time have told about stories, and they put new information in government documents proving that there's been cover-ups and conspiracies. Yeah. And it's like you can go out around America and tell people the government's involved with mind control, and a lot of people won't believe you. But back in the 1970s, the United States Congress came out with a congressional hearing where the Central Intelligence Agency in documents, you can pull it up on PDF right now, in documents where the United States government, the CIA primarily, admitted to conducting mind control experiments from like 1953 to like the mid-70s when this congressional hearing came out. So the government's already admitted to conducting mind control experiments on people. Like that's nothing you can really argue. That's fact. That's conspiracy fact, not conspiracy theory. And so people like the people that you're arguing with on the streets trying to explain this stuff, they don't know that a lot of the stuff that you're talking about is already documented fact.
Yeah.
Like there's a movie called JFK with Kevin Costner and Joe Pesci and all these people. And they were trying to indict this guy named Clay Shaw back in the late 60s for participating in the murder of John F. Kennedy. And he beat the case and he moved on. But then in 1979, the Department of Justice admitted that the guy was a CIA employee. And they were trying to figure that out at the trial. At the trial, they wanted to know if he worked for the CIA, and he said no. And so he beat the case, but then later on, the government admitted he did work for the CIA. So, huh?
They be bending the rules all the time.
Yeah. And so they were supposed to release more information to the public about all this stuff, and they never did. And so to this day, a lot of people, there's a large majority of people who have government documents and factual information about the Kennedy assassination. Like the government has came out with information about this already that you can tell there's been a cover-up. It's in black and white. But the average people in America that are walking the streets, they don't know that. So when you go to them and you say, hey, you know, the CIA was involved in the Kennedy assassination and all this, they're going to act like you don't know what you're talking about, you're crazy. But at the same time, they don't know any version of the story. Like it used to be people at least knew some kind, like they used to know the regular version. They don't even know the regular version of the story. They don't know any version of the story. But they'll still say you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, literally. I don't know how they can be so brainwashed. It's like the government has lied to us many times. They have lied to us like a lot of times, and people still believe everything the government says. It just makes no sense.
Yeah, they've lied. They've been lying so much, man. You know, and we're not talking about like in the last 10 years. I'm talking about, you know, and the government, I'm sure, has been lying ever since it was created. But we're in modern times, you know, you could go back 50, 60, 70 years, and it's lie on top of lie on top of lie. Like that whole 9/11 thing was definitely an inside job. The government was definitely a part of doing that. And they lied about that. They've lied about all these assassinations, Bobby Kennedy, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, Medgar Evers. They lied about the Vietnam with the Gulf of Tonkin. That never happened, and that was supposed to be the reason the United States got into the Vietnam War. And so they've been lying so much about so many things that, you know, America shouldn't even really want to go into the future. America should be saying, wait a minute, you know, fuck that. We need to stop everything and go back and reassess what's happened in the last 60 years and figure out what happened there first and then move forward, you know. And if you don't know what's happened in the past and you don't know what's going on now, and if you don't know what's going on now, you really aren't going to be ready for what's going to happen in the future.
Exactly.
And so it's like, you know, it's really wicked, man. It's like, you know, it's like something that can't even be turned off.